This is your spiritual game plan, and I'm your host, Cheri Fletcher. Change. It happens to all of us. You've invested your time and energy into an important role, sometimes for years. Then suddenly it's time for you to move on. Maybe you've worked hard on a dream, and now your path is taking a new turn, but the dream isn't going with you. Perhaps you've raised your kids, and now they've moved on, but your empty nest is filled with parent care. Maybe you're in the middle of diaper changes and laundry piles. If you find yourself asking questions like, where do I fit in anymore? Am I even relevant? How do I find my purpose now? You are in the right place. This is the show for women in a season of transition. I believe that while your roles in life will change, your purpose is eternal. I'm here to help you understand just how intentionally you were made by a creator with a game plan. Through interviews and inspirational guests, we'll discover ways to help you unlock the purpose God placed in you, develop a game plan for your life's calling, and embrace the intentional masterpiece you were created to be. Today, I will be talking with Kris Reece. Kris is an author and holds a PhD in Christian counseling and an MA in theology. She lives with her husband in New Jersey, and together they have 3 children and an ever-increasing tribe of fur babies. As a minister and Christian counselor, Kris's passion and mission are one of the same, to help others experience the miraculous healing power of God. Do you believe God when He tells you that He sent His Son so that you could live more abundantly? The enemy continually tries to block us from that, but we have a God that will continue to call us. Kris will be sharing 3 ways that God calls us to the purpose He already planned. Hi, Kris. I am so glad that you are joining me today from New Jersey, which I just learned. How are you doing?
Hi, Cheri. So glad to be here.
I became aware of your ministry through Spark, the Christian Podcast Conference community. And I was thrilled to know that you and I share a passion in helping others understand that they don't have to find their purpose or change who they are in order to live it. I just love that you have that same passion. And you mentioned that we often align ourselves with other women who are, having a great job, a beautiful family, and plenty of positions, but that's not always fair because we're not comparing apples to apples on that. Say we're not looking at the whole story of what's going on in their lives, and we can feel disconnected and sometimes worthless. And our minds are going to jump back and forth between imagining a greater purpose, what we were created for, and then our hurts and our fears hold us back. So I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself, your family, and how has God helped you with your own transformation on that topic?
Wow. So first and foremost, thank you for having me. I am so honored to connect with your listeners. It's really exciting to be here. First priority, I am a princess of the King.
Amen.
I tell my husband all the time, which by the way, he's a wonderful man. He loves to do things for me. I say, honey, I am a princess, not a prima donna. So
love it. That's awesome.
Secondly, I am a wife and a mama to a beautifully imperfect blended family. And finally, I'm a minister and a Christian counselor who loves to help people to defeat life's devils, grow in their faith, and just become everything that God purposed them to be. So that's me in a nutshell.
That is awesome. And how is it that God, was able to transform some of your thoughts of when, like, if you compare to others, and, it's so easy to look at you and talk to you and think, oh, she's never had that issue. But a lot of, it's your ministry because it was your mess. God gave you your mess and turned it into your ministry. And so, how has that been for you? Or how were you able to get to that point?
Wow. I would love to be able to tell people that it was a snap of the finger and God just transformed everything overnight. It was just so not true. Everything with God I've learned in my life is a journey. And one of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 25:2. And it says, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter. It is the glory of kings to search it out. So many years ago, I would wake up with this nagging thought. Is this all there is? And I would wake up every morning and that would be the first thing that would pop into my head. And I got to be honest with you, Cheri, I actually battled with that because I was very much a go-getter and ambitious, typical type A personality. But then on the other hand, I wanted to be the woman that God called me to be, and God calls us to be content. So we're supposed to be happy with where we are, right? So I was battling between this pull for purpose and this selfish feeling of discontent. So I would deal with this thought every single morning. And then finally I said, God, I got to do something here. I was in the fitness industry. I'd been in the fitness industry for about 24 years. And I will say I was very good at what I did. Not to brag or anything, but sometimes, our discontent comes with our unhappiness, but I wasn't unhappy. I had a thriving personal training business. I had a big, beautiful home. I had a beautiful daughter, and I had more vacations than I knew what to do with. Life was good. It was really good on the outside. So if somebody were on the outside looking in, they'd be like, oh, she's living the dream. She's got it all together. She knows what she's doing. And on the inside, I was just tormented. I just felt like I was not living up to my purpose, not even just potential, to my purpose. And as I grew and got to know God more, that scripture that says, well done, my good and faithful servant, would just constantly ring into my head. And I would think to myself, when I get to heaven, am I going to hear those words? Is God really going to be impressed that I made somebody's glutes firmer yesterday? So I just sat there and I said, God, what are you calling me to do? So I just assumed that, I had to start ministering more to the clients that I was working with. And that was all well and good, but it didn't last very long. That discontent was always there. So that's when I started to dive into prayer more, and God began to reveal that he wanted me to go back to school. So I started to look into it. Now, I've always had a passion for business. So I assumed that he wanted me to go back for my master's in business. But then I started to strike a deal with God. I said, okay, God, if I go back to school, I'll master in business, but can I minor in biblical studies? Because I really want to get to know your word better. And then I heard crickets. Nothing. And each time I felt the sense to go back to school, the door closed on me. Cheri, this went on for 6 years.
Wow.
So, here I am, I'm still in the business, I'm still doing well, and I'm still tormented. It wasn't fun. So during that entire season, a lot of different things changed. Unfortunately, early on, I went through a divorce. I finally realized what my ex-husband was doing with his time and money, but God transitioned me into a I don't want to say a better place, a safer place, a place where it was just me and him. And it was around that time that I started to grow more in my relationship with him. He started to peel back a lot of the layers. Now it really wasn't so much about my purpose. Now it was really about me and what he was looking to do in me. And it was the worst of times. It was the best of times. And as I look back, it really was the best time, because God began to strip away all of those things that he knew was going to hinder me. And he began to instill in me all those things that he needed to instill to take me where he needed to take me. So do you have a moment for a quick story?
Absolutely.
So it wasn't, I want to say a little bit longer later, I wound up meeting the man of my prayers. We fell in love and we wound up getting married. And on our honeymoon, I woke up in the morning with that same thought. Is this all there is?
Oh my word.
Cheri, I was crushed. When I hate to admit, you think, okay, I'm out of that bad relationship. God finally brought me somebody who is God-fearing. I should be happy. Here we are again. I should be happy, but I'm not. So what's happening? Now, please don't get me wrong. It had nothing to do with my wonderful new husband. He's absolutely amazing, but it had everything to do with my purpose in life. And he kept coming back to that. So here we are. Now, that condensed version that I just gave you was a span of 10 years.
Wow.
So this was over the course of 10 years. So on my honeymoon, I hear this, is this all there is? But here's the mistake I made. I actually said it out loud. On my honeymoon with my husband. So here, this poor guy must be thinking like, oh, okay. So, we had this kind of in-depth conversation, and I shared with him a little bit of what was going on, but it really wasn't something that I wanted to dive into on our honeymoon. So what I did is I did the next best thing, and I just took off and I went down to the gym. If you want to get rid of any stress, just go work out. So I get down to the gym and I pick a treadmill, I turn on my hot pink iPod, and I just start running to the first song that comes up. And as I'm running, this singer starts singing. She says, pack my bags and my regrets. Every moment that I've wasted chasing after my pursuit of happiness has only left me searching. There must be more. Cheri, those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't run anymore. I was choked up. I continued to listen to the song, and she went on to sing, take my life and lifted me up to the skies, take my dreams and help me to fly. On the wings of possibilities, come rewrite my history. Till it's only you I'm chasing after. Take this life and make it matter.
Wow.
And it was in that moment, laid out on the hotel gym floor, crying, wasn't running anymore, that I realized it was all about finding my purpose. It wasn't about finding a career or being happy. It was doing what he's calling me to do. And that was my journey.
Wow.
Messy, exciting, liberating, amazing.
That's awesome. I love it when God does that. That was good. And that is that's the title of your book. Yeah. And, with your ministry, there are so many things that I resonate with. And one is that I still often wonder if I even matter. And I should say a lot wonder if what I'm doing even matters. And I can start asking myself, like, why am I doing this? Does it even make a difference anywhere? And so when I saw the title of your book, Making It Matter, a roadmap to living out your purpose, that caught my attention, because that's my verbiage. I love that. And also, like I believe that it's not just about understanding what the purpose is, but you say have a roadmap. I say have a game plan to living it out.
That's right.
And knowing that it does matter, but the only way we're going to know it does matter is by the roadmap, the game plan, and actually living it out. And so today I'm so excited because I want to speak into the heart of whoever is listening, that they might be watching others fulfilling what they think of their God-given purpose and wondering, why do I feel so stuck? And is what I'm doing even mattering? Because they're looking at what other people are doing. And, there's just demands on us to meet certain standards. And then I fall into the belief that those demands and trying to reach them are my purpose. And that and that I do matter if I'm able to keep up with them. And I clearly remember the day that when God spoke to me and just spoke the words, Cheri, your roles in life are gonna change. But the purpose I give you and what what you bring to each one of those roles is eternal. And it's what you bring in the role that you're in right now, right here, today, this minute, not who you think you're going to be. I used to think, well, when my kids are gone, then I'm going to be able to really live out my purpose. And so you shared in your book that, purpose is synonymous sometimes with career and with positions. And I wanted to talk with you about, giving hope to anyone that's listening that gets so much of their identity and of their value in what they are doing and trying to keep up with those demands.
Yeah, one of the things that I try to teach people is that career and purpose are not one and the same. Now, your career can be an extension of your purpose, but it might not. You see, careers can change. Your purpose doesn't. And purpose is not as specific as people think it is. It's rarely that God is going to say, I want you to do X, Y, Z for ABC. It typically is a higher level purpose. And it can even go as high and as vague as being a support system, being an encourager, being a leader. And then everything else will begin to extend out from that purpose. So I know we might be getting a little bit off track here, but one of the things that I like to help people understand is get to know yourself first, because God wired you with intentionality. He gave you specific desires. He gave you specific experiences, and he gave you a specific temperament. So rarely is he going to assign a purpose that is polar opposite to your personality. Yes. Now, there may be seasons where he does that because he needs to refine and do what he needs to do. But ultimately, he knows how to match things. He knows how to line everything up. So when you begin to understand your God-given temperament, am I a support system? Am I an encourager? Am I a natural born leader? Some of these things now start to come into view. And one of the things that you can also begin to understand is what is not for me. So for example, if you have been given a specific temperament or personality and another good opportunity comes your way, which, trust me when I tell you, the enemy is going to bring you plenty of good opportunities. But good does not mean it's God's best. So if we don't understand ourselves, we're never going to begin to understand our purpose. So a lot of times we get caught up in that career mode. Career can be an extension of purpose. Some women even identify, my purpose in life is to raise my children. Yes. Well, yes and no. That was not why God made you. He has a very unique, specific purpose, and that may have been your purpose in that season, but that's not who you are. So your purpose doesn't have anything to do with your career, your kids, your education, or even the ministries you serve in. Amen. Nothing to do with that. It is the very reason that God created you. And again, I go back to Proverbs 25:2. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. It is the glory of kings to search it out. And that's what we should be doing, is being on a search. So here, the last thing I'll say to that is, you can tell if your identity is rooted in something if you ask yourself, how would you be if God took it away?
Yes.
If I lost my career,
yes,
would I feel like I lost my purpose?
Yes.
And that's where you're missing the mark in not understanding God created you for his purpose, not for your purpose.
And you just dropped the mic right there. A lot of the women that I minister to, the phrases I hear is, I need to find my purpose. I need to find who I am. And then I'm not relevant. And when I hear that, I recognize immediately that they have identified a role as their purpose. And when that role is gone, whether it was a season ran out, it was taken from you, that's when you start hearing people say, I just got to find my purpose. And so I just love what you said. And in one of the blog pieces that you wrote, the first thing I've read of yours before your book was the 3 ways, that God calls us into your purpose. And you use Ephesians 2:10, which I love because that's the core verse for my ministry. First of all, you're a masterpiece. And there is no one in the world that creates something that doesn't have an intentional use for it. Has envisioned what it's going to be used for, has envisioned how they want others to feel when they use it or see it or experience it. And yet here's God saying, you are a masterpiece. You were created with a plan. And if we know how intentional we are, God's even more intentional. Right. And we constantly doubt that. And the other verse you used in that blog, which I love, is Joshua 1:9. And the reason I love that, this isn't going with our topic, but is that when we built the house that we're now moving out of, we wrote scriptures on the studs and the beams and the doorposts. And that one is written over my son's nice. Doorposts. So I always love hearing that one. And so in the blog piece that I wrote, you gave 3 really great examples of how God calls us. Being positioned, I love that one. Prodding and pulling. I would love it if you'd share those 3 examples with the listeners.
Sure. So in positioning, if we think about, God positioned Joshua under the leadership of Moses to lead the people of Israel into the promised land. So sometimes we are uniquely positioned by God. And here's where we make the mistake. We think if things aren't going well, if we're not in a prominent position, if we're not doing what we think we should be doing, then we are not in our purpose. We're not in God's will. And that's simply not true. Never along the way definitely did we not read in scripture where God was speaking to Joshua. No, he called Moses to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt into the promised land. He wasn't talking to Joshua. So Joshua had no idea at that point. So sometimes we are uniquely positioned under the people that God has us. So I'm talking to that one person right now who's under a leadership that she's questioning, that she's wondering, God, get me out of this. And God is saying, no, I have you here for a reason. Will you trust me? So sometimes God positions us. And another way is prodding. So we go back to Moses. Moses was prodded. So God used a burning bush to talk to him. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a form of communication I would love to have. God just set the bush on fire. So I know. But even with that, he still needed prodding. He still needed convincing to do what God was calling him to do. Remember, he argued, he debated, but God, I'm not an eloquent speaker. Yeah, but God, are you sure you're calling the right guy? Yeah, God, do you know my personality? This really doesn't line up. And God had to prod him into that. So there are going to be times where your calling doesn't make sense. And what's interesting is I actually went through something very similar. So going back to my going back to school story, eventually God told me again, I want you to go back to school. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. By this point, I was just like, yeah, whatever. And I threw everything down. I was like, God, if you want me to go back to school, you're just going to need to make this keyboard move because I'm not going through this again. But he spoke quietly to my heart. He says, I do want you to go back to school, not for business. You see, it was in my head. I assumed it was business because that was my strength. That is what I already knew. But God said, I want you to go back to school for biblical studies and counseling. And it was at that point where, I'm going to be honest with you, I was like, counseling? Really? Like, just listen to people? Seriously? All joking aside, God knew what he was doing. And it did. It took a little bit of prodding. I said, God, do you not understand? God, do you not see who I am? God, do you not? So the prodding is almost described as kind of like an inner, a growing knowing. God drops something into your spirit, and then he just kind of lets it percolate for a little while, and then it grows, and then it comes back, and then it grows a little bit more. I believe sometimes that's God's prodding. And the last is the pulling. So some of us are so stubborn, like Paul, who had to be pulled into his new calling through an encounter with the Lord Jesus. So yes, powerful Paul had to be pulled out of his persistent one-track mind to be shown, hey, this is the direction that I have you going in. So position, prodding, and pulling. I'm sure there are other ways that God actually calls us into our purpose, but those are three primary ones.
I really like that. That when I read that, it is so powerful. And I can think of aspects in my life when there's been all three. And, where God has had to position, and I did fight it because the person who I was under wasn't doing it right.
Can't relate.
Yeah. And what was really humbling is that when I did become that position, the things I still wanted to incorporate while I was in the position I had wanted still didn't take place. They took place after the person that replaced me. And everything I had tried hard to incorporate happened under them.
Wow.
And that was really, at first I was like, what? I've been trying so hard. And then they come in and it passes in 2 weeks. But then I thought, okay, Cheri, you've just been planting seeds, but the way you're coming across, set up the next person. And then that came. So I had to just consider it a humbling lesson. It was still a good idea. It just had to happen a different way.
It's so true.
Yeah. But so anyway, that was another sidetrack. But when I was listening to you, that incident came up in my mind of that one time. And so you mentioned, God plants that seed, or even looking back in the way God had put these ideals and who you are. And one of the questions I love to ask my guests, every guest, is how far back can you see the very purpose that you are living out today in who you have always been?
Wow, that's a great question. And I have to be honest, I couldn't see it.
Wow.
The enemy got in very early with me. He got in so early that my identity was distorted from the start. I was an introvert, but I so desperately wanted to fit in that I tried to become something that I wasn't. I was so consumed by my outward appearance that I neglected my heart. What I didn't understand is I was a leader at heart, but my self-esteem was so damaged, I couldn't even see my own potential.
Wow.
But even with all of that, there was one thing that I knew, and that was I wanted to help people. I've always known that I wanted to help people. Little did I know that God would use it for his glory, which I'm very thankful. Unfortunately, I found myself helping people in ways that I personally didn't feel like mattered. Now, not to say that fitness doesn't matter, right, but for me, my days of firmer glutes and bigger biceps, and it didn't matter. So, in looking back, I would say I've always wanted to help people.
Right. And you became a counselor.
Look at that.
Look at that. But even when you're helping others firm up, it'll be interesting when we get to heaven. I always say I want to go back and watch my life movie when I get there, and seeing who you actually helped, that you were so unaware of the difference you made, the small, that longing that God wove in you to help people, how you said just the right thing because it was who you were and who God created you to be. And you're thinking, okay, I'm telling her to do, a couple more squats, but you said something that she will remember. It'll just be kind of fun to God say, this is when I used you, because
that's a wonderful way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And another fun question I like to ask that's off topic, but get to know you a little bit better, since you're a blended family. Is there something that if I were to ask your kids or stepkids, a phrase that they know you're going to say and they remember most about you. Would there be differences in the sides, or would they be the same for your kids and your stepkids? And what would it be?
They're the same.
They're the same?
It's the same. Yeah.
What is it?
I would have to say, do the right thing because it's the right thing.
That's a good one.
Always taught my kids, just do the right thing because it's the right thing. If you have to ask, do the right thing.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one. I might have to quote it. I asked my kids that question, and before I became official empty nest, the last night we're all sitting together, and I was like, what is one thing that you would quote me at? They said, well, you always say, my answer is not going to change, but my attitude is about to. So I'm like, well, all the things, all the wise words.
I love that, right? And that's what you remember.
So as we close up our time together, I would love if you would share a message of hope that you mentioned in your book that is found in Romans 11:29.
Absolutely. For the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. My friend, you have a very unique purpose. And the enemy is going to want to derail you. He's going to want to distract you, and he is going to want to defeat you. But as long as you are willing to say yes, there is nothing that can change God's plan for your life. Nothing.
Thank you. I needed to hear that. I love that. I would love to encourage those that are listening today to get your book. Like I said, this is a roadmap to living out your purpose. It's going to save you countless years of misunderstandings and wondering on, the path to thinking that you have to find the purpose that God actually gave you. And like you said, it can't be taken. And that's so wonderful. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. We're going to include all the links that we referenced today in the notes. But I just thank you so much, because your message is so powerful.
Oh, thank you, Cheri. It's been my honor. I do honestly believe that God has a unique purpose for every single listener. But Cheri, I want to, if you don't mind, talk to you right now.
Okay.
There has been times in your life where you are questioning what God is calling you to do, whether you are even on the right track or not. And I believe that he's here today to say, daughter, you have no idea what I've destined you for. And all I need you to do is to just walk with me. It's going to be a very slow walk up front. But just like romantic walks on the beach, I am going to woo you, and I'm going to guide you, and I'm going to direct you. And there are even going to be times that I'm going to carry you. So please don't run ahead of me. Don't fall behind me. Just walk with me.
And now I need a Kleenex. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It is so my pleasure. It has been an honor.
Thank you for listening to this episode with Kris Reece. Her message of hope found in Romans 11:29 is one that I am claiming as I just moved from my home state of Washington, where I have lived and raised my family for the last 28 years, to the state of Tennessee. And I'm now finding myself in a season of transition. But she reminded me that God's gift and his call are irrevocable. They're going to go with me into this next season. Which of the three ways has God used to call you into the purpose that he has already planned? If this message blessed you, and you know someone who would be blessed by it, please share. I'd also be very grateful if you would subscribe so that you don't miss other great guests. If this is your first time listening to Your Spiritual Game Plan podcast, be sure and go back and listen to the other great episodes. Then give a show rating and an honest review. And remember, God has always had a purpose for you in the plans that he made long ago.